Joining us right now is former presidential candidate and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Maria. Great to be here.
The president talking about the military there in the South Asia seas. We've got this enormous armada sitting there, ready, positioned in the South Sea there in Asia. I guess the Chinese don't necessarily want that there. Do you think that that's going to be enough to get behaviors changed around North Korea and reining it in?
You know, what people seem to forget about Donald Trump is that he has surrounded himself with military people. You've got General Kelly, General McMaster, General Kellogg, General Mattis. I mean, it might as well be General Mills. He's got generals everywhere. And you know the one common denominator about military people? They hate war a whole lot worse than the politicians do. They're the last people who want to go to war. But if they're called to it, they're going to do it the way that they've been trained to do it. What Donald Trump is really saying is, guys, we don't want to have a war. But if you want to start one, we're not going to just play around. We're going to finish it. Now, that brings people to the negotiating table in a way that Barack Obama never understood, because they knew he was never going to engage them. And they knew that he would put out a very weak first offer, and it would only get weaker. What we're seeing in Donald Trump is the kind of leadership we saw with Ronald Reagan, which was he scares the daylights out of them. They think he's a cowboy. They think he's going to do something reckless. But the truth is, he's going to put them in a position where basically he'll make them an offer they can't refuse.
Governor, it's Kevin Kelly. My main question here is then, how do we handle this situation? We know that the North Koreans are not going to give up their nuclear capabilities. Unfortunately, it's the only way they can stay in their own regime. Now, how do we do this? Do we do a regime change? How do we transition power? Do the Chinese have to come in and just nix the nuclear capabilities? How do we figure this out? Where do we go from here? Because it seems to be we're in a stalemate.
Well, Kevin, I think the Chinese are the key, and no, North Korea is not going to voluntarily give it up. But I think China has the capacity to step in as the big brother and say, you know, you've been horsing around, you've put the whole family at a bad spot, we're not going to tolerate it anymore. I've said for several months that I think the best solution is to sit down with the Chinese, consult with the Russians, and say, look, China, you can have North Korea. I know this sounds pretty radical, but annex North Korea. Take it into China. We don't care, because we're not afraid that you're going to launch some type of initial nuclear strike. You've already got nuclear weapons. Take the regime, get rid of this guy, bring some stability. And as bad as that may sound to some people, it's a heck of a lot better than what they have there currently.
Governor, markets are watching the conversation around trade with South Korea, and there's been some question around whether the president wants to move away from that, whether he wants to scrap it. Where do you see that going in the context of the larger conversation around North Korea?
Well, once again, the South Koreans have already indicated they're willing to renegotiate the deal. I think that's again showing the kind of strength Donald Trump has brought to this. They figure that we'd better sit down and work with him, or he may make it worse than we can negotiate. So rather than just saying, no, we're not going to make any moves, they're actually saying, okay, let's take a look at this. And he's making it very clear. We're not going to continue in trade agreements that hurt the American worker, that hurt the American economy. And bravo, it's about time that America exerted leadership, and that's what we're seeing in Asia this week.
Look, we want to get to a couple of subjects. We know that it's Election Day. We want to also ask you about the Trump factor. But let me throw in a tax question, Governor. What's your take on this tax plan? They're in committee this week and next week trying to mark up this bill. The Wall Street Journal has called this 45.6% rate a stealth tax rate. Why is it so hard for the Republicans to cut taxes?
Because they can't get out of the stupid role. I think on Halloween they all dressed up as Casper, the friendly ghost.
I guess so.
Afraid, basically, of their own shadow. I don't understand this. Maria, you made the point earlier that when you have people who are paying the most taxes who actually get a tax increase, that's not tax reform. That's counterproductive to growing the economy. The Republicans have done a pathetic job of messaging. They always allow themselves to get sucker punched with the Democrats who make this class warfare and talk about how the rich are going to pay more. Look, you could double the taxes on the rich people, and the Democrats would still say the rich aren't paying their fair share. Quit playing to the rhetoric of the Democrats. Do what in truth will stimulate the economy, and let the results speak louder than the Democrats can counter.
That's right. And, you know, Dagan, I've said it before, I'll say it again. They're getting bullied by the left and the shaming, calling this tax cuts for the rich, which it's not.
No, and it's not reform
Tax increases
either.
for the rich.
It complicates the code. It complicates the code on the individual side incredibly. And ideologically, I have a problem with living in a nation where about half of people right now pay no federal income tax. That means that nobody is paying. Those people are not paying a dime.
Yeah, but they're getting a tax cut
to fund our military. And that just ideologically, from a personal perspective, is wrong. And this is only going to get worse with this tax bill. You will likely have a larger percentage of people who not only pay no federal income tax, but also get money back from the federal government
so what's
when
the
they didn't
answer?
pay in the first place.
What's
They get a refund.
What is the answer here, Governor?
The fair tax, which is based totally on consumption. And I've been saying it for years, and I wish I could sell Donald Trump and Congress on this, but it's the only tax that actually builds the economy based on something that is fair and authentic, and we pay at the point of consumption, not at the point of productivity. When you punish productivity, which is what this tax bill ultimately does to the people at the top of productivity, when you punish productivity, you get less of it. And when you reward really inattention to effort, then you're going to get more of that.
Yeah.
Do we really want an economy that rewards not participating and punishes productivity? I don't think so. That's not how we raise kids. It's not how we train dogs.
Yeah.
It's not how we build a great economy.
I mean, and I recognize this stuff is really hard. Look, we all recognize the threats that we face now. These are new threats that we've ever seen. And yet it's pulling teeth getting more money for the military, right? I mean, it's pulling teeth getting more money for defense because of the deficit hawks who are focused on the $20 trillion in debt. So I understand how difficult this is, but I still remain you should be cutting taxes on the people who pay the taxes.
Well, and you can't cut your way out of the debt. That's just the reality. The only way out of the real long-term situation is growth, growing the economy. And if we fall for this Democratic nonsense that says that the pie can't get bigger, it's already fixed and it's just carving it up, and most of all, carving it so that people who don't produce get more of the pie, then no, we're never going to see any benefit. We're going to have to see that 4% economic growth fully funds Social Security and Medicare. That is what gets us out of the long-term disastrous situation. Nothing else will do it. We can't raise taxes high enough. We can't cut expenses low enough. But you can grow, and that's where we ought to be focusing. And unfortunately, Congress is so afraid that they're going to be criticized for it. Well, man up, get criticized, get condemned.
Yeah, Diane Black told us yesterday the next order of business is going to be taking an axe to the entitlements. We'll see. Everybody's afraid to do it. You know, we know that's where the spending growth is. Anyway, Governor, we can talk to you all day. Thank you so much, sir. Good to see you.
Take care. Thanks.
Huckabee.